So welcome everyone. We are here with a new set of interview questions on object-oriented programming using C++. So we'll be covering the basics inside this. So what are the features and characteristics of object-oriented programming languages? That will be the first question. The answer to this is classes and objects, abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance and polymorphism. If we talk about the object-oriented programming languages, classes and objects are the important features based on which the object-oriented programming works. So the main focus of object-oriented programming is on real-life modeling, and in real-life modeling, when we want to create a program or a software by use of any language like C++ or object-oriented language, we need to use the constructs, classes and the objects. Apart from this, abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance and polymorphism are providing certain features which are important for object orientation, which are incorporated in this language. Now coming to the definitions of these, so we'll be defining these after this. Next we'll be explaining the features of these object-oriented programming language like C++. First one is your class. So class can be said as the collection of data and the functions that operate on the data. So in an object-oriented system, the class can also be referred as the user-defined data type. So user-defined data type is something which is defined by the user, a data type which is defined by the user. It will involve the data and functions which can work on this data. So functions are basically the member functions of the class, and data corresponds to the data members of the class. So if we talk about class, it is referred as the user defined data type, although it works like a built-in data type. Built-in means it is built in the language or defined in the language, that this construct can be used as the data type. Apart from this, it can be also said as the collection of data and functions, and it can also be said as collection of objects, means whatever class is being defining, that can be accessed with the help of something which is referred as objects. So objects are basically the instances of class which we are going to create, and based on which we are going to access the data and functions of the class. So it is acting as a user defined data type but behave like a built-in data type, and the definition of this class, how we are going to define this user defined data type, it is defined with the help of a class keyword which is defined in the iostream.h header file. iostream.h, or you can say iostream header file. So this is going to define you or provide you with this class keyword, so that the structure of how we are going to define this data type, this is already known in the language. Examples for classes will be your fruit, furniture, book, vehicle. These can all be the instances, or you can say examples of classes. After this, what we can do is we can create the objects of the classes like this: class name and the object name. This is the syntax, then semicolon. So this is the default syntax for creating the object of a class. So this is resembling like a built-in data type variable creation statement. Like in built-in data type, this variable I is of integer type. Here we are defining that this object name may be of this class name type. So class name is a user defined data type. So for example, we have a class test and the object is OJ we are going to create. So this OJ object is of type test. That means this OJ object will hold the data and functions of type this test, and test is the name of my class which I have defined. Okay. Next question that comes in mind is, what is an object? How you are going to define an object? So objects are basically the runtime entities, or you can say instances of the class in an object oriented system. So what actually represents an object? It is an entity which can store the data and the associated functions. So that means whatever we are going to define in the class, that can be accessed with the help of the objects which are instances. For example, a person can be an object, a place can be an object, bank account, a table of data, or any other item that a program works with can be said as an object. For example, in an employee class, if employee is the class, objects of the employee can be your manager. Object of the employee class can be your staff member. Then object of the employee class can be your HR department people, HR department person, say, or it can be any other thing. Okay, so these are various types of objects which we can create out of this employee class. So these can be your manager, staff member, or HR department person, or any other person which are belonging to the employee class. So in case of your object-oriented programming, classes and objects are the important features. Then we have something which is referred as the next feature of object-oriented programming, which is your abstraction. If you want to define abstraction, it is basically an act of representing essential features without including the explanations or background details. So suppose I want to define a class, I will use some data members. Suppose I want to create a student record class, I will define some data members which can be part of the class, based on which we are going to store the data. So the important data members can be your student name, roll number, section and marks. So these are the details which are required for every student, which are important to us. Okay, so and there are other details which can be part of the student information. It can be student height, it can be student weight, and it can be student color. But these are the unessential details which are not important to us. So that means when we are defining the student record class, whatever features you can represent or whatever data members you can represent with the specific student, they can be categorized into important and unimportant things. So important things we have to keep, and unimportant or unnecessary things we have to ignore. So that's why it is also referred as selective ignorance. Okay, so when we are defining the class and defining data members, what we are actually doing is the data members are abstracted. Okay, so that is basically all about abstraction. It incorporates the data hiding feature also. Next feature is about encapsulation. So in case of encapsulation, we can define it as wrapping up of data and functions which can operate on the data into a single unit referred as class. It is referred, or it is called as the encapsulation. Okay, so the idea is that the data is not accessible to the outside world, and only those functions which are defined inside the class can access the data. That means when we are defining a class, like suppose student class is there, or student record class is there. So inside the student record class, what we are defining is student name and suppose student marks. Suppose we are only concerned with these two details and other details are not required for our record purpose. Then it will also include functions which can work on this. So when we talk about functions, so these are the things which are allowed to work with this particular data. No outside function which is not part of this function record class. Suppose this is the outside function defined in the outside the class. So this function is not part or not defined as part of this class, not defined within this opening and closing parenthesis. So that means this function f1, function 1 cannot directly access these data members which are part of this class. So this incorporates outsiders cannot access the data. So that means it is providing data hiding feature. So it can also be said as it is a way to implement data abstraction, because when we are defining a class and creating this class as the encapsulation unit or encapsulated unit, that means we have to define data members. So these are my data members which are defined as part of the class. So these are abstracted, or you can say abstraction is being performed to identify which data members are required. Then when functions are incorporated, we can combine them and ultimately the class is created, which is referred as an encapsulated module. Examples for class can be, in a car we can have braking mechanism, and in a car we can have a clutch mechanism. So the thing is that when we want to apply brake, when we want to perform the braking operation, so we have to just put a pedal on the brake lever, so that brake lever allow us to perform the braking operation of that particular entity. But how this brake works, it is not known to us. So that means we are encapsulating data as well as functions, but functions details are not important and that is not visible to the outside world. Similarly, how the clutch operates, that is not visible to outside world. Similarly, the electric switchboard, it is an encapsulated unit. It provides you the data like the switchboard option, which you can press, and it can also provide you some other details like how the color of that switch is, how it works, how it performs. So based on that, the switch can work, but how it is internally providing that option of switching on the light or switching on fan or any other appliance, that is not visible to us. So it is providing abstracted features. So that's why it is referred as the example for encapsulation. Then we have something which is referred as inheritance. It is an important concept considering your object-oriented programming feature. So if I want to define inheritance, it can be defined as the property by which objects of one class acquire the properties of objects of another class. So that means it is incorporating a feature of reusability. So reusability says that suppose we have created a class 1 which is having data and functions. We have worked with this class. Now I want to make some changes inside this class. So in spite of modifying this class, what I will do it, I will create another class out of this. Means I will take this class 1 as the base, and on this base I will create a new class which is referred as derived one. So that means certain properties of class 1 are inherited by class 2. Just like we have parent and the child relationship, in which parent is acting as the base class and the child is acting as the derived class. So this parent is providing certain features to the child class which are inherited ones. So based on the this real life concept, this inheritance is incorporated in your programming language also, because when we have defined this class 1 already, it is defined, worked and tested. When we want to make or add some new features, why to modify this? Why we cannot create a new class? So that's why this new class is created here, which is class 2 acting as the derived class. So this is what about inheritance. For real life example, you can take, suppose we have a bike which is your Splendor. Then we have a bike which is your Splendor Plus. So this is base and this is derived. So Splendor Plus is inheriting some of the features of your Splendor class. Similarly, we can have iPhone, and there are various versions of this iPhone like iPhone 10, 11, then 13 and so on. So these features are basically based on inheritance design, because some features of 10 are incorporated in 11, base remains the same, some new features are added into this 11 and so on. So these are examples for inheritance. So in this case, the class which is acting as the starting point of inheritance, it is referred as the base class or superclass, and the class which is deriving or inheriting the features of some other class, it is referred as derived class or the subclass. Next feature is polymorphism. So polymorphism says that it is ability of something like a variable, object or a function to take more than one form. Like a function can exhibit different behavior in different situations. So function can perform different behavior in different situations. That means it is providing more than one form for its functionality. Like suppose we can have a add function. It is allowed to add, suppose 2 data items 10 and 20, or maybe some other generic things. Then we can have another add function. It is allowed to work with 10, 20 and 30. So that means 3 data items it can add. Similarly, we can have something which is adding 4 data items, okay, and 5 data items. So based on this add function, name of that function remains the same, but it is able to incorporate 2. This is able to incorporate 3 data members or 3 values, and this is able to incorporate 4 values and perform their addition operation. So that means based on the inputs provided, the function is performing different operations, or you can say the same operation but working with different number of data. So that is basically your polymorphism. It can work with functions, it can work with others also based on its types. And when we talk about polymorphism, inheritance is important, or inheritance is necessary thing. Without inheritance, polymorphism cannot be depicted. And it can also be said as a interface with multiple implementations. So interface is add here, and multiple implementations are there, like it can work with 2 data items, it can work with 3, it can work with 4 data items and perform the same operation of addition. Okay, so interface, or you can say the name of that functionality is same, implementation is different. Similarly, like we have vehicle class, we are deriving 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler, 4-wheeler out of this. Suppose we provide the brake option. Brake function is there in the vehicle. Every vehicle should have a braking mechanism, whether it is 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler or 4-wheeler, but the implementation of this brake is different for each and every one. Implementation of this brake feature is different for 2-wheeler, different for 3-wheeler and different for 4-wheeler object. So this is how polymorphism works. Then there are certain examples, or you can say types of polymorphism. First one is your compile time, and next is your runtime polymorphism. So in case of compile time, examples are your function overloading and operator overloading. And for runtime polymorphism, it is your virtual functions. Okay. So these are the examples. We can go in the details in case it is required. What is function overloading? Function overloading is this one, which we have explained already, the addition function, add function. And operator overloading is like, suppose operator plus is there, it is supposed to work with 2 values a and b, and values of a and b can be suppose 20 and 10 or 10 and 20. So it can perform the addition of this 2 thing a and b and give us maybe the third result as 30. But suppose a and b we are performing addition, but a is a variable which is storing data ab, and b is a variable which is storing data cd. That means the strings data or string type data. So that means this plus operation is not supported on the string data, so it should give us error. Okay, but if we try to simulate this thing by use of operator overloading, which says that I can give additional responsibility to this plus operator so that it can add or work with strings also. So that is basically your operator overloading. Means basic functionality is to work with integer float double data items, but now it is able to work with the string data items also, because we have given it the additional responsibility. So that is operator overloading. Then runtime polymorphism is done or incorporated with virtual functions, that is used to incorporate your dynamic binding feature. So that is all about your polymorphism basics. Dynamic binding means identifying the procedure call at the runtime, or identify or making the decisions at the execution time for any particular operation that we want to perform. Then next questions can be your differentiate between the structure or procedure oriented and the object oriented programming. So this is another important question, like what is procedure oriented programming? In procedure oriented programming, programs are divided into functions or procedures, and in this programming, object oriented one, it is based on creating and working with objects. So object oriented one we know right now. And in case of procedure oriented programming, like your C language, which is a procedure or function oriented programming or structural programming, and in object oriented we have example as C++ language. So here in C language we divide the program into functions and procedures. So the emphasis of programming is moreover on writing functions and procedures for performing the task. But in case of C++ language, emphasis or focus is on data and its security part. Then in case of C language, or in structure oriented language, we follows the top down approach for program design, and this follows the bottom up approach for program design. So what it is top down? Top down says that suppose in C language we are declaring functions, then we write main function, void main, which is the main function of our program for executing our code. Then inside the main function we can make function call statements, means we are calling these declared functions, but the definitions of the functions are residing on the bottom part after the main function. So definition or defining of functions is done at the bottom part. So it is top down because main function is at the topmost layer. Then from this we are going to call the definitions of functions which are defined after this, which is on the down part of the program design, means while we are designing the program or writing the program. But in case of bottom up approach, like in case of C++, we define the class first, then we write the main function, void main or int main. Then we are going to create the objects and calling the functions or data members of the objects of the respective classes and performing our task. So why it is bottom up approach? Because from main function we are starting the execution, but we have to go to the top to identify the class definition, and executions of these functions can be performed from there. So bottom to up we are moving, so that's why it is designing process is bottom up. Then in object oriented programming we support data hiding, and in in procedure oriented programming we does not support data hiding. In case of your object oriented programming, it is used to solve the real life problems easily because of the concept of classes and objects. But in case of structure or procedure oriented programming, we can model the real life problems, but it is critical in nature while modeling and complex. Then we talk about object oriented programming. It supports code reusability by inheritance. So once inheritance is there, we can reduce the redundancy, means duplicacy of code. But as structure oriented programming does not incorporate reusability, so there can be redundancy of code in case we are using that thing. So these are the certain differences between your C and C++, or you can say the structure and the object oriented programming. So we will end up the session today at this point. So for many further updates, you can refer to the channel. We'll be working on the new set of questions after this, and that can be referred. So if you like the video, then you can subscribe the channel for further updates. Thank you.